Hi folks, this is Al with BaumBuilds.com, here with an instructional video for the BDT, the Bolt-together Drift Trike that you put together yourself. This video is just one in a series of instructional videos designed to be used in combination with the build plans available through BaumBuilds.com or on eBay, username Auto Beverage. Now beware of imitations buy only from the inventor. That's me. This particular video will cover drawing 352, which is the seat assembly for the two-seat Bolt-together Drift Trike. Here we are at the shop, so let's get started. Let's take a look at our clean work area for drawing 352. Here I have all the components laid out on a table, free of debris. Every component necessary to put together the assembly 352 is laid out here, including my tools, my hardware pulled out of the bags in the appropriate quantities, and everything ready to go. Let's take a look at drawing 352. As usual, we have a bill of material in the lower right hand corner, assembly notes in the upper left hand corner, various views including an exploded view. Let's take a look at the tools necessary for this drawing. We have a 7/16, 9/16 and 3/4 inch socket and a ratchet to drive it. We have a 5/32 Allen wrench. We have a Phillips screwdriver, a tape measure and a Sharpie, and we have a hacksaw, and I have some epoxy, and we'll talk about that in a second. Let's start out by taking a look at the assembly notes. Number one is watch instructional video, which is what you're doing right now. Number two is to modify or shorten the U-bolt, which is item 7 per this video. So let's take a look at that. For this build, for the two-seat build, you're going to need 3 of these U-clamps here, and the part number is in the plans. And they actually require shortening. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our tape measure, and we're going to mark with a Sharpie here 1 1/4 inches back from the end, and we're going to cut those off. Now notice what I did is I ran the nuts up past the cut. That way when you make the cut and you unthread the nuts, it'll clean up the end. So I've done 2 of the 3 U-clamps in this case, just to show you the difference here before and after cutting. Now this trike will require all 3, but only 2 for the seat assembly. 1 will be used in the frame assembly. So to make the cuts, you can use a regular hacksaw and put your U-bolt into a vise if you wish, or if you have a angle grinder, you can use a cutoff wheel and make the cuts that way. Now let's talk about this cup holder. The trike comes with a front and rear cup holder, the two-seater does, and in the rear this cup holder is optional. If we go over and look at the drawing here, it actually attaches to the back of the front seat. Now it puts the location in a pretty scary place, so if you are uncomfortable with having that cup holder in that area, if you know what I'm talking about, then simply eliminate the cup holder. The rider in the back typically obviously doesn't need both hands as the driver would to steer, so you can eliminate that cup holder. But I included in the kit, and I want to show you that the cuts, the bend lines here, I had the material cut most of the way through, so you can bend this by hand or in a vise to get the proper bend angle. So if you choose to install the cup holder, you'll see there's 2 holes here. You're just going to use some sheet metal screws to run that into the back of the seat. So if we take a quick look at the seat here, you're going to install that somewhere along the back here. And we'll get into that more if you even choose to use the cup holder. So you can use some sheet metal screws like I have here and a Phillips screwdriver to run those in, or you can use some epoxy and glue the cup holder in place, or you may choose to use both. So if you want to do the cup holder, that's up to you. We'll take a look at doing it here, and then you can decide later. So let's get started. Let's say you choose to install the rear cup holder. So I'm going to take one of my seats from the drawing, which is item 6, and I'm going to take my rear cup holder, which is item 12 from drawing 352. And as I mentioned before, these bend lines here are slotted, so you should be able to bend this by hand or in a vise or with a pair of pliers. And the first thing I want to do is I want to manipulate this first bend here. So it'll be this bend right here. I want to manipulate that so that I can put this cup holder all the way up there. I don't know if you can see where I have it here. All the way up against the edge like that, and in the center, of course. And you want this surface to be flat with your seat, which is kind of a little bit of a curved surface there. But you want this surface to be flat with that, and then obviously you want the cup holder to stick straight out. Now you can manipulate these a little bit later, but once we're satisfied with that position, then we're going to take our Sharpie and just mark those two holes here and here. So what you're going to do is, if you have the means, you'll take a small drill and you'll drill a hole slightly smaller than your sheet metal screw, and you'll run those in. Or you'll use a clamp and you'll glue the cup holder on with epoxy. So I'm going to go ahead and drill the holes and install that, and we'll come back. So we've installed the cup holder. I just took a cordless drill, drilled a small pilot hole in the back. Now be careful when you're drilling. Obviously you don't want to let the bit go crazy after you poke through, or you'll come through the vinyl on the other side and you'll be able to see it. Also, the sheet metal screws that you select should obviously be short enough that they won't come through the cover in the front. And if you need to, you can add spacers. So here's what I ended up with. I got it mounted on there. I did add a couple spacers behind. In this case, I just used some 1/4-inch nuts to space that out. And then I just gave this tine here, this tab, an initial bend to get it close to being parallel to that. Now we'll make this adjustment later. So let's set this aside and move on. Okay, next I'm just going to take one of my item 11s here and put it up on this block here so we can get access to the underside. And then I'm going to take item 9 here and lay it there, lining up these 3 holes here along the top. Then I'm going to install my hardware, which is items 4, 3, and 5, 3, 4, and 5, and here they are. You'll see them on your bill of material. And we're going to slip that through so the button head's on the opposite side, which will be exposed, and then we'll go washer and then nut. And we're going to do that in all 3 of these locations. Now, this piece is bent here, this item 9, so there's a 4th hole here that will have to line up with this hole in the plate. So you may need to bend this tab a little bit by hand, which you should be able to do. Bend it out so the hole lines up, and then you'll put your next piece of hardware in there. So I'm going to go ahead and put these 3 bolts in to hold this upper part of this piece, and then I'm going to bend this out and put my 4th bolt right there, and then we'll be back. So we have item 9 installed. I just want to jump back in here and tell you should probably add a 7/16 wrench. You're gonna have difficulty reaching in here with the socket because of this low clearance here. So now before we go on and add item 10, which is the front piece here, we're going to take item 8 and combine it with item 7. Now I wanted to point something out with item 8 here. It's bent back on itself, so there'll be a little bit of a gap right here. I don't know if you can see that. And that gap should be just enough that after you cut your U-bolt, item 7, you should be able to snake that right in there and right down into the 2 holes. Just like that. See that? I got it in there now. So we're going to leave that in there temporarily and just put your nuts on. Just get them started 1 or 2 threads to make sure that the U-bolt doesn't back out on us when we're not looking. So I'm going to put that right up against there, put them right in there like that. So see that? We kind of combine these as one. Now this gap is going to get pulled together when we install this. Okay, so next we're going to take our item 10 here and we're going to put this in place just like this. Now we have to sandwich our item 8 behind here. So item 8 will get sandwiched on the back side here, and you'll see it in the exploded views. So we're going to combine all that hardware at one time. So let me loosely get this hardware started here to connect item 10 to the side plate item 11 here. Now note also that this is the adjustment for the front footrest tube. So this front footrest tube can be adjusted further back. So you can put it in these 2 sets of holes these two sets of holes, these two sets of holes. If you have a shorter rider in the back, you're probably going to go ahead and adjust them towards the back. But for now, let's put them all the way up front here. So let's go ahead and make our sandwich here of items 11, 10, and then 8 with the U-bolt number 7 inside. So let me get that hardware in there and we'll jump back in here. Alright, I got 3 out of the 5 screws here that attach item 10 to item 11. And now we're going to put item 8 on here. So I flipped this around just to show you. You're going to want to add a speed clamp to your list of tools. Now I laid item 8 on there, lining up the holes. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and use this clamp to draw those surfaces together. You see that? Just like that. We're going to draw that together. And now I'm going to be able to get my hardware into these 2 holes. Just like that. And I'm going to put the nuts and washers on and we'll be back. And now that item 8 is installed, we can simply remove our clamp. So next, we're just going to flip this sub-assembly over here, install item 11 on the opposite sides in the same manner using our 1/4 inch hardware in all these holes. We're going to cinch down all these bolts and nuts. We'll do all that and then we'll come back. Alright, we're back. We put item 11 on the opposite side as well, and we have item 8 with 7 integrated inside of it on the other side as well. We have it on both sides, so here's what she looks like. Now this hardware, all this hardware, you can go ahead and snug this down now, all these little fasteners. If this doesn't fit down over the frame bar, we'll have to go back and loosen them up, but for now let's snug them up and then we'll move on. So next I want to go ahead and install the footrest tube itself, which is item 13. Now there's 1 on each side. This will just go right in here. Recall this clamp is on loosely. This will go right in the hole here. Now what I want to show is this surface here, this cut surface, will bear against this surface right here. So it'll go through both holes here in item 8, and this surface should bear against this surface. Okay? So we're going to insert those just like that, square this up, and then snug these down. Now later we're going to rotate this footrest tube to where we want it, and we'll do that at final assembly. But for now I'm just going to kind of put it facing forward a little bit. Put the tube in there with the 2 faces bearing as I just described, and we're going to use our 9/16 socket and snug these down. So I'll do that and we'll be right back. Okay, just want to jump back in here with the handheld to show item 13. We got our 2 footrest tubes installed. This is what I wanted to show you. The cut edge of the tube here is clearly against the back side of this surface. So in other words, it's all the way in, butted up against here. Same thing on this side. All the way in and butted up against there. Should look just like that. It shouldn't be crooked. It shouldn't be tilted. It should be flush and straight, just the way you see it right there. Alright, let's move on. Now also note that I have some bed liner out here where your foot will go, just as an anti-slip surface. Now I just used Herculiner there. It's available at most auto parts stores. And you'll see the part number displayed at the bottom of your screen. Next we want to install the seats themselves, which is item 6. In this case we're a 2-seat drift trike, so we have 2. So here's our front seat where we had our cup holder installed. Remember, the cup holder goes on the back of the front seat. So here's the front seat here, and here's the back seat here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the assembly that we assembled so far, and I'm going to choose the appropriate holes down in here that's going to set the adjustment for the front and back seat. Now remember, we're going to make final adjustments at the final assembly, but for now let's take our best guess. For me, I'm going to put this front seat about in the middle, maybe 1 click forward of the middle. So I'm going to make sure that when I set this sub-assembly over the 2 posts in the front seat, that's where I put it. And then the back, I'm going to put it closer to the back to leave a little more separation between the front and rear seats. Now that's your preference, and of course Once we get to the final assembly step and you sit on it with your intended riders, of course you're going to want to move it back and forth however you see fit. But for now, those are the adjustments I'm going to pick. So next I'm going to take my spacer tubes, which are items 14, and there's 4 of these, 2 for each seat. So I'm going to put this right over the peg, right over the threaded post. So make sure you remember to do that on the front and the back seat. Okay? Next I'm going to go ahead and lift this assembly up and set it over the pegs of the front seat, and remembering the holes that I wanted to select. So I'm going to take this, lift it right up over here, and set that right down there on those 2 pegs. Okay? Now next I'm just going to take the washers and nuts. This is the 1/2 inch hardware, and I'm going to loosely start this so we don't lose it. So just get your washer over each post, get a nut started over each post, just enough to hold it, just get them started, just like that. Now next we're gonna snake this back seat in. Now remember, the cup holder goes on the upward side of the seat, so what we have to do is we have to actually snake this up over. So I'm going to go ahead and lift this up, get this up over, and then line up my 2 posts in the rear with my 2 intended positions. And that's what she looks like, just like that. So I'm going to do the same thing with this hardware, the nuts and washers. I'm going to slip it over the posts, lock everything down. Now for this you're going to need an extension and a 3/4 inch socket. So let me do that, you do the same, and we'll be back. And we're back to the handheld just to show the nuts and washers, 1/2 inch nuts and washers holding your seats onto the rest of your assembly. Quick note here, I forgot to mention, when you're tightening these U-bolts down, it's best to tighten a little bit at a time, go even. A little bit here, a little bit here, draw it down even. But for now, you should just be snug, because we'll adjust those foot pegs later. So that is it. You are done with drawing 352, which is the seat assembly for the 2-seat drift trike. If it looks like this, congratulations. Now remember, we can make adjustments at final assembly if necessary. A lot of these items are adjustable, but we'll see. Maybe we won't have to. Let's move on. We'll see you in the next instructional video.